Hello and welcome. My name is Zaffar Iqbal and you're watching the Mojo Story. India might soon have its first president from a tribal community and the second women president ever. Of course, first being Pratibha Patil. Now, Draupadi Murmu has been named as the presidential candidate of the NDA. She belongs to Odisha and she's a former governor of Jharkhand. The announcement came after opposition named veteran politician Yashwant Sinha as its joint presidential candidate. The polling will, of course, take place on July 18th. Now, we know that Yashwant Sinha was announced as opposition's presidential candidate. He has started his career as an IAS officer, was in BJP before joining the TMC. Uh, Sinha was a former union minister, while as Draupadi Murmu is the BJP's presidential candidate, first person of scheduled tribe status to be nominated for the post of president. To discuss the issue, we're joined by an eminent panel. We're joined by Madhavan Narayanan, who's a senior journalist. We are also joined by Professor Manojit Mandal, who's from Jadavpur University, a political analyst. And of course, we are also joined by Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst. Welcome all to the show. Let me start with you, Madhavan. Has the candidature of Draupadi Murmu come as a surprise, or it is quite expected? There was already a buzz going on that she will be the one who will be finally chosen as the presidential candidate of the NDA.
Surprise for me, but I shouldn't have been surprised because honestly, I've not been tracking the election as closely as I would have liked
Yeah.
to. But I know there are friends, including well-known TV journalists, who had actually spotted her as the likely candidate from the BJP. But having said that, let me also say that the BJP has done some kind of a coup because although she was a possibility. No one saw it as a highly probable name. Enough, she did not figure in any of the headlines, either in the newspapers or even in the TV channels. There was only the buzz in some of the very informed or speculative social media circles. So that is the first thing I want to say. Having said that, I must say it's a sort of a coup for the BJP because 2 hours before she was named officially by the BJP president JP Nadda as the candidate, I had spoken to another TV channel about Yashwant Sinha, and I thought it was a very smart move by the opposition to choose Yashwant Sinha because he has that personality. He's himself a former BJP person, so simply not slottable as a left liberal or anything. So I thought that he would be able to raise the issues of the opposition. But where the BJP has scored is that it has made this contest sort of non-political in a way, although it's going to be political officially. It is
Yeah.
non-political because it's a victory for the republic, as I see it.
Yeah.
It's not about
So,
BJP versus, yeah. It's the first time a tribal woman from East India. Of course, I
yes.
do not get the visual symbolism of her at a Shiv temple this morning. So therefore, she's been seen not as a tribal preceding the arrival of the Sanatan Dharma in India, but as somebody who is co-opted into the Sanatan Dharma. And to that extent, she is as much a convert as any Christian tribal or from the northeast or from Odisha or Chhattisgarh. So therefore, to that extent, it still remains within the Hindutva sort of a plank. But uh, it will be very, very difficult to oppose her candidature, especially for those who were sitting on the fence. As you can see, the Biju Janata Dal, led by
Yeah.
Naveen Patnaik, has
Yeah.
already so indicated. So therefore, it's a
Yes.
coup.
Rahul Ishwar also joins us at this point in time. Rahul? Yes, Rahul, you heard Madhavan saying it's a coup of sorts by the BJP. Yeah, if you can unmute. Okay, let me ask Manojit Mandal. You heard Madhavan Narayanan saying, obviously, BJP had done its homework, and it's a coup of sorts in the end.
You see, it appears to be quite good in terms of symbols, kind of gesture that you are actually extending your laurels to these quote unquote subjugated class in the society. But I really don't see the kind of weightage that should be given for the presidential post in her credentials. Uh, it's a BJP's political move just to outsmart the opposition. It's a cosmetic gesture. I tell you with full confidence, myself being a Dalit, no self-righteous Dalit icon will be made president in this country. BJP wants a titular president, the kind of president that we have been seeing for the last 5 years or so. That person was also a Dalit. I can criticize because I'm myself a Dalit and teaching in one of the best institutions in the country. But I have no comment saying the current prime minister being a Dalit, what has he done for the Dalit? Look at the kind of suffering that we have to undergo days in and days out.
You
I
think
mean,
it's
this
just
is just
symbolic? You think it's just
absolutely
symbolic?
symbolic
Uh,
just to make a completely, spoon-fed president, a titular one,
okay.
without doing anything to the subjugated community
But
from which you are
but you
coming.
but you
I
are
can say
but,
this because I belong to that particular community, and I have no
but
fear
you
in saying this.
but you agree that it's a smart move, Tahsin Poonawala?
Trying to outsmart, I'm saying.
I Thank you so much for having me on your show, and hello to all my fellow panelists and to all your
Yeah.
viewers. I absolutely agree with what Professor Sir said, that Professor Mondal said, that this is symbolism to an extent. I'm not taking away from the political genius of this. It is a politically a very good stroke by the BJP. Though I'm politically opposed to it, I have to admit that it's a good move. But yes, it is symbolism. The outgoing president, President Kovind, also, in my opinion, and I say this, and Professor, just let me correct you, you don't just have to be a Dalit to say it. Somebody like me who sympathizes with the struggle the community has gone to also has the right to say it. The outgoing president may have been a Dalit or is a Dalit, but he, in my opinion, did not stand up for the causes of our marginalized citizens of our country. And we've seen the atrocities on our SC citizens gone up. We've seen their histories being manipulated. Just look at my city of Pune. Right now I'm in Mumbai, but my city of Pune, where Bhima Koregaon happened, and how Dalit activists were framed by the BJP government with evidences being put in their computers, and the president never stood up for any of the fellow citizens. Or during the ill-planned lockdown of 4 hours, where most of the people who passed away were the poorest of poor and the weakest section of society. And I wrote to the president that this lockdown, at least give them trains or buses, and the president never stood up for anybody. So the president, in that sense, hasn't stood up for his community or for the country. Having said that, this is a good political move by the prime minister. He will obviously, and as announced by the chief minister of Odisha, he's going to get support from Odisha, which by and
Yes.
large ends the numbers. He's also going to get
Yes.
Jagan support. We know that. Let's not go into why Jagan is going to give him support, but he's going to get support from Jagan. We know that, which may basically makes up these numbers. That's the end of that. And if this rebellion Shiv Sena does take place and they do not return, he's got the numbers
Exactly.
to go through. So with
So
basically with
so
Odisha and Jagan, he's through. I just have one line to add. Just one
yeah,
line to add.
yeah.
I am extremely petrified today. I saw the visuals of Yashwant Sinha and extreme Sudhindra Kulkarni, and I have one advice to the opposition. And I say this from a space of very good space where I want the opposition, and I'm anti-BJP. Look, if you're going to have people like Sudhindra Kulkarni as your advisors, you're going to lose the battle before it's even begun. So let's get people who can get consensus, who can try and woo Patnaik ji away, who can try and woo Jagan away for whatever the thing, rather than these advisors. That's more dangerous, in my opinion. And I say this with
Right.
humility.
And of course, with Naveen Patnaik indicating support to the BJP candidate, there seems to be no contest in the end between the two. You'll agree, Rahul Ishwar?
No, I would like to point out that BJP is fulfilling the desire of father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. And Mahatma Gandhi has called for a Dalit woman as the president because many books says around 1947 itself, Mahatma Gandhi wanted a Dalit woman as the head of the state. or president of India. So in one way, BJP is fulfilling Mahatma Gandhi's desire. That's a positive thing. Of course, there is a political move, there is a political subtext. Nobody can deny that. But I would humbly diverge with a much respected Madhavan sir when I doubt whether we can use words like convert to her, because we all belong to the whole Sanatana Dharma Hindu fold. Whether you are a tribal, whether you are a Brahmin, whether you belong to different castes or communities, we belong to the larger Hindu community or larger in the culture mode. So and she being at a Shiva temple is right symbolism at the right space, and especially Shiva being one of the most celebrated icons of India is also not from the so-called Savarna pantheon, if we can use that word. So, it's a national integration. It is the desire of Mahatma Gandhi, and BJP has rightly pointed out, and I believe Narendra Modi is trying to consistently to a center-right line for a long period of time. And even Pujaniya Sarsanjalak Mohan Bhagavatji was also towing a more pluralistic, inclusive kind of line by saying, don't search for Shivaling everywhere. And there, I know, they are one of the most announced project is the Hindu Unity Project. That Hindu unity in a very positive, pluralistic tone. I think this sets the right tone so that a template for the future to follow.
It sets the right tone. Madhavan Narayanan, you quickly want to come in?
Yeah, I want to come in on the fact that I understand where Rahul Ishwar is coming from, but I think we have to be mindful of the fact that both the word Hindu and Sanatan Dharma is used very flexibly, and I must add promiscuously sometimes, because if Hindutva includes the right to be animist, the Sanatan Dharma includes right to be atheist, then I would say that he is right. But if atheism and animism are not allowed in Sanatan Dharma, then he is wrong. So, and there is no book that tells us, unlike, let's say, Islam, which has a Quran, or Christianity, which has a Bible, there is no book that tells us what is the Sanatan Dharma, and even if there was one, nobody would really agree with it. As practices go, Sanatan Dharma is like the British Constitution. It's largely unwritten, and therefore it's a bit of an intellectual air splitting, but it's very important to understand in the context of the past 200 years, where Christianity and Islam and rational thinking, Protestant thinking, which has come even into Hinduism, we are the land of Charvaka, and we are the land which has had a materialist tradition. So if you're talking about intellectual freedom, I would agree with Rahul Ishwar. But if you're talking about imagery and co-option within politics, then, well, I must say Congress is as guilty, because, we've had Dalit and tribal identities are actually separate. But if you take K.R. Narayanan, who was the first Dalit president of India, his name was of Vishnu. So that was as symbolic as this. So I'm not going to be hypocritical in this. I don't support any political party on this issue, but I'm glad that a dark-skinned tribal woman from the interior of Odisha has been even symbolically being co-opted as president is very significant, because symbolism plays a very important part in politics, especially in nation building. If I may say so, the Prince of Wales is the Prince of UK. But the reason why he's called Prince of Wales and not Prince of England is because of the British desire to integrate Wales and Scotland and Ireland into the United Kingdom. So it's very important that we symbolically include Dalits and tribals into the higher offices. I would say let me finish by saying the next generation of tribals, the more I want a tribal to play cricket for India. There is barely one or two now. So if you ask, the way to look at national integration in India is not just through highest political office. It is also in terms of mainstream of society that includes not just professors like Dr. Mandal, but also we want more industrialists. There is a Dalit Chamber of Commerce. I want to see a tribal Chamber of Commerce tomorrow.
More participation, obviously, inclusion, participation at all levels.
Professor Mandal made a disclosure that he's a Dalit. Let me make a disclosure that I'm a Tamil Brahmin. So, but we produced a poet called Subramanya Bharati who said there is no such thing called caste. So it's always important to be inclusive in gesture. Symbolism is a good beginning.
Symbolism is a good beginning, and it cannot be it cannot be just you have to look at it very in a focused way. Of course, participation and inclusion at other levels also, Madhavan Narayanan making the point. But coming to you, Manojit Mandal, the fact is, before you come to this point, the fact is that people like Farooq Abdullah, like Gopal Krishan Gandhi, they turned down this offer of being the presidential candidate, joint presidential candidate of the opposition, perhaps sensing the outcome in the end. Don't you agree?
No, you see, I think Mr. Gopal Krishna Gandhi knew that the numbers are not really favoring him. I mean, he did
Yeah.
contest last time also as a vice president, so and he lost. He is a bureaucrat, with the title, with the lineage of a very famous family, as you know. I think he was quite aware of what he was doing. But Mr. Sinha, I think, is a tremendous candidate. I tell you, you need to choose a person who must be quite abreast with the constitution of this country, with the laws, with the rules, and everything. And with all due regards, again, I'm quite not sure about this particular candidate. Draupadi Murmu. I mean, with all due regards, again, I completely agree with the symbolic, issue. But I mean, look at her educational background. Look at her, credentials. This is amazing. You are putting a person. There are plenty of Dalits. I mean, who are tremendously educated. I mean, I can name one a PhD MP in BJP's kitty from Bengal, who is teaching in Kharagpur IIT. Is a member of parliament from Jharkhand. So he is also a Dalit. He is also a tribal, but educated, but PhD, knows the things about India, the constitution, and what not. You're basically choosing, I repeat again, you're basically choosing a titular head. Even at least Mr. Kovind was aware of the constitution of India. But what about this
Yeah.
lady? What about
Okay.
this lady, with all due regards?
Tassin wants to come in. Tassin, quickly, you want to come in before I ask you the question?
No, again, I have so much respect for Professor Saab, but I just want to say that while I continue to oppose the BJP, she was also governor of Jharkhand, and I must say that she did conduct herself well in Jharkhand. I just want to say a small story that friends who cover the media spoke about her. I think her name was even being considered last time in 2017, and then I think Prime Minister Modi thought that she could extend her political career for slightly longer before she becomes president. So, when I speak to people in Jharkhand, both JMM and Congress MPs, MLAs who I know extremely well, they'd say that she did conduct herself well in Jharkhand, which ironically brings me to my next point, which I forgot to add on to the last thing. I think JMM will also go because it'll be very difficult for JMM not to vote for a tribal lady.
Yes.
So if you have Naveen Patnaik ji's indicated, you've had that Jagan's
Yeah.
going to go, and if once JMM goes, I think it's game set match. I mean
Yeah.
that's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you
But
wanted to ask me.
but what can be the strategy of the opposition, given the fact that Yashwant Singh has hinted time for a larger national cause? On one hand, there are people like Naveen Patnaik indicating that they will support the NDA candidate. So what can be the possible strategy, whole strategy of the opposition now? As you
The
say, the deal has been clinched. It seems.
See, in any battle or in any war, your strategy cannot be that I have to defeat Mr. Modi and anyone else will become. That cannot be a strategy. Your strategy needs to be, can I win the election, right? So when we say that in larger national interest, as much as I understand it, it is kind of vague. You have to be a little precise when you're trying to bring about a unity as to what is the end goal. So that I think that end goal somehow the opposition tends not to articulate it properly or show it properly either to the electorate or in this case to other parties who they want to bring on board, who could be fence sitters. I think we need to be very precise with what the goal is. And one advice that I keep giving people in the opposition is, there's one, okay, you're criticizing Prime Minister Modi, obviously he's the Prime Minister and all of that, and I agree, and that should be criticism. But then my happiness should not come because Modi lost an election. My happiness should come if I win an election. Am I winning the election? Okay, so Modi is losing. So
Right.
who's winning? Am I winning? So I think somewhere the opposition needs to stop and reboot. It's not about removing Modi. It's about, can I come to power? I think there's a difference in the two, and I think we need to understand that difference.
Opposition needs to understand that difference. So, Madhavan
Yeah.
Narayanan, you want to come in?
Two very quick points. One is
Yeah.
slightly in humor to Dr. Mandal's remark. that he
Yeah.
says, we need a constitutionally qualified and educated president. While I agree in principle with him, I would say that half the ministers in the current Modi uh, cabinet are less smart than the president who's going to be there in Draupadi. Draupadi Murmu is a very intelligent person. Let me salute her. She's smarter than some of the cabinet ministers that I know. So let us not
Yeah.
insult this lady from a tribal background. So just because she's not as good as KR Narayanan doesn't mean that she's not any less smart than some other ministers. The other point to what Tehseen said, I want to say that let me go one step further. It's not just about removing and winning, it's also about the issues. I think the opposition has done a very good job in choosing Yashwant Sinha because the eye should be on 2024 parliamentary elections because the presidential elections, unless you're on a very thin ice, it's not really worth it. In that sense, Yashwant Sinha is highly articulate, highly informed, and he can raise issues which might have a knock on effect on the Lok Sabha elections or even in opposition unity issues, which he is himself on record about. So I'm not going to say Yashwant Sinha is a loser just because if he loses the presidential elections. He's probably the best spokesperson that the opposition as a whole can have at this juncture because he brings in various worldviews. He's a retired IAS officer, and therefore, I think from a point of view of articulation and campaign, he's a winner.
Okay, Rahul Ishwar, Madhva raised an important point about 2024 elections. BJP's move is also smart in the sense that looking at the tribal community, the vote bank, the women voters, this is a combination of many things. Perhaps that would help the BJP in the long run when we talk about the elections and an eye on those elections from the BJP's point of view.
Of course, it's politically a smart move, but I pointed out earlier, BJP's parent organization or mother organization, RSS, has always been diligent to reach out to tribal communities. They see it
Yeah.
as a historical redemption. Now, being a Brahmin Hindu activist, I realize that our forefathers have not done justice to the backward communities, and that's a reality. That's the reason why even people
Yeah.
like Swami Vivekananda went on to say that you people are lunatics and the place you stay is a lunatic asylum when he came to Kerala. So that's a larger issue of India too, because we have been unfair to our Dalits, our marginalized communities, and that's a historical reality we need to redeem ourselves from. And options like Draupadi ji will be an excellent, of course, there is a symbolism element, but it is a historical confidence builder. And on the other side, we have Yashwant Sinha ji too, who is also an excellent candidate. So it's a choice between two good options, and we should all be proud of it. There are two good very options, and we can be proud of it. And hopefully, and just to add to what Madhavan sir said, even the father of modern Hindutva, Veera Savarkar, was leaning atheist. And we have such a huge pantheon of different ideologies. Hinduism can be called best a way of life, like Brahmachari Siddheshwar Sai versus State of West Bengal courts, earlier Supreme Court Justice Gajendra Khadkar, who says Hinduism is a way of life. So that Hindu, Sanatana, whichever name you want to call it, we are a part of it, and there should be a celebration of it. And such messages will be inclusive. And Hindu unity alone is not enough. There should be an Indian unity too. And Modi ji and especially Pujaniya Sarsangchalak has always been going to that pluralistic line where he categorically said, the Sarsangchalak said, we are not going to have any more agitations and don't try to find gods in the mosques. So that's a very confidence building line, a centrist, a center right kind of a line. I think that's a winning combination for India, and that is going to set the templates for the at least the coming decade.
Okay, talking about the coming decade, we're specifically talking about the elections to 2024. Manojit Mandal, also the fact that Odisha, Draupadi Murmu belonged to Odisha, it would have been very difficult for Naveen Patnaik not to extend the support to the NDA candidate. Obviously, BJP would also want to capture Odisha in the long run. That's the state that they're not ruling.
No, no, first of all, I can't really, sort of resist the provocation of answering to Rahul, Mr.
Yeah.
Rahul Ishwar, about the pluralistic view of this country and how the current dispensation is doing. When you have, someone like the Prime Minister himself saying, "Kapda dekh ke pata chalta hai ye log kaun hai," the whole narrative about pluralism is completely punctured. When the Home Minister is coming to Bengal and saying that the people who are a particular class who are coming from Bangladesh are actually Charmites, I mean, what are you talking about? And how long shall you continue with this symbolism? 75 years, for God's sake. We are celebrating the national independence of this country in 75th years now, and still have to go for that. 70 to 80% of this country are actually Dalits, OBCs, SCs, and STs. And look at the representation of these people in the parliament, in the ministries. And Madhavan sir may be quite right. The ministers are not smart. And can you name the social justice minister? I don't even remember his name. Who is the minister of social justice, in this country? Who is heading that ministry? When there are so many tortures in this country, at least we knew someone like Meera Kumar. At least we knew someone like Kumari Shailaja. But who is the social justice minister in this country at this point in time? Can you name him readily? I think it's Mr. Atawala or someone like that. I mean, that's actually, it says it all. That when it comes to execution about the policies for the Dalits, like I'm sitting in a university or even across the country, only 7 to 10% teachers are STs and STs. Look at the reality. There is two, three vice chancellors in the central universities. They're heading. We need more
Okay.
people in execution,
Well,
in the level of execution, in the administration. I mean, this
that's
symbolism is
exactly
quite
that's
much.
exactly
But how
what
long shall it
Madhav.
continue with this symbolism?
No, that's exactly what Nadhavan Narayanan was saying, that we need people in perhaps a cricket team, in other spheres of life. But symbolism is also very important, as he pointed out. Tehseen Poonawala, yes, you want to come in.
Symbolism is extremely important, and to that extent, I agree with Madhvan, because look, and let me just take this slightly away to the symbolism with regards to the Muslims in our country, or fellow citizens of ours. And as Professor rightly said, the Prime Minister said, and I complained against the Prime Minister, कपड़े पहन के दंगाइयों को कपड़ों से पहचाना जाता है. He was taking a pot shot at Muslims. And today, with Mr. Naqvi retiring from the Rajya Sabha, even symbolically, the BJP has no member of parliament in Rajya Sabha. So symbolically, the BJP is extremely clear on what it wants to do. It wants to, as Rahul said, try and build a base. You may agree or disagree with it. That's a political decision. But it's trying to build a base saying, look, all of us Hindus, whether they consider Dalits or tribals, etc., as Hindus, or at least politically they consider them Hindus, maybe not in culturally, but they say we are all together. But when it comes to Muslim, the symbolism is extremely true. There'll be no Muslim in an important position. Where is the Muslim in an important position where it comes to this government? Which also brings me to a very interesting question. What happens to the vice president? Because that will come up in some time, and they need somebody to run the Rajya Sabha. And as Professor said, most people in this government, or I think Madhvanji said, most people in this government don't know anything about either the laws or the constitution. So they need somebody who can run the Rajya Sabha for them, as Venkaiah Naiduji ran the Rajya Sabha and was complicit, and I say this word with a lot of responsibility, in suspending opposition members so that bills could be passed on a voice vote, and you don't even have division of votes. So they'll need somebody who can do that for them. So they're going to hunt now for a vice president after this.
Okay, before I go to Rahul Ishwar, quick word from Madhavan. Madhavan, you want to come in?
Yeah, I want to use some words here, which is that symbolism is good, but tokenism is bad in politics. So what Tehseen just explained is tokenism, where you cannot have a chief minister like Yogi Adityanath saying 80-20, which clearly shows othering 20% of the population, and that is not on. So similarly, even Savarkar, although Rahul Ishwar likes to sing praise of Savarkar as an atheist, he was also outwardly, openly hegemonist, and his writings are there. It's all documented. He was not inclusive by any chance. So pluralism requires inclusion, not in tokenism, and it has to go beyond symbolism into what I call structural inclusion, out of which affirmative action is just one small beginning. So I think we have to know the difference between symbolism and tokenism. And yeah, I still like to think that half the cabinet here is a joke. And therefore, it's important to understand that the politics is not just about winning elections. It's about administration. It is about policy. It is about justice, social, economic, and political, as the Constitution's preamble says. So I think there's a long way to go.
Okay, there's a difference between symbolism and tokenism. Last word to you, Rahul Ishwar.
If I can just add, yes, I know I concede that once in a while mentioning about Abbas is not enough, but PM is making the right noises, even condemning, even condemning the cow lynching, standing from North India, or even reaching out, or even Ramnath Kovindji coming to Kerala saying Kerala is a great heaven of pluralism and harmony. So yes, more needs to be done. Even starting from Pujaniya Sarsangha, like Sudarshanji's times, RSS as a Muslim Rashtriya Manch and a Christian Rashtriya Manch to outreach to communities. Largely, they have been not very effective, if I can say in a very moderate way. But yes, more and more reach out is needed. Rather than the social media angry Hindutva right-wing move we are seeing, there are serious thinkers in the Hindutva camp who would like to reach out to Muslim communities. People like Indresh ji are very active in reaching out to our Muslim brothers. And we hope Gandhiji's Hindu-Muslim unity agenda can be taken forward in a more modern way in the modern times with people like Modi ji and Mohan Bhagwat.
The agenda of unity must be taken forward. Thanks to all our panelists for joining us today. That brings us to the end of our show. Thanks so much for joining.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.